The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a vast metal canyon. Hundreds of alien beings sat in curved rows that rose up toward a crystal dome ceiling. The air hummed with translation devices turning strange clicks, roars, and musical tones into words everyone could understand. Ambassador Hyun-woo. Kim adjusted his simple black suit and looked around the chamber. After 5 years representing Earth, he still felt amazed by the sight. Tall, thin, crystalline beings that looked like living glass. Furry mammaloids with 6 arms and kind eyes. The floating ethereals that seemed made of colored smoke. And dozens of other species, all gathered to keep peace across the galaxy. Hyun-woo sat at the human section, a modest cluster of seats near the middle of the hall. Humans were still new members of the council. They had only joined 50 years ago proving they could travel between stars without destroying everything they touched. Most species had taken thousands of years to earn that trust. Elder Taemin Park sat beside him. The old diplomat had gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. He had been doing this job since before Hyun-woo was born. Taemin was reading through reports on his tablet, but Hyun-woo could see worry in his expression. "The Velkari are really going to do this," Taemin whispered in Korean. Hyun-woo nodded. For weeks they had been hearing rumors. The Velkari Empire was planning something big, something that would break the oldest peace treaty in the galaxy. A deep horn sounded through the hall. All conversation stopped. The council speaker, an ancient being called Morthok, who looked like a walking tree with golden bark, stood at the center podium. "The council recognizes War Marshal Vexthor of the Velkari Empire," Morthok announced. The Velkari section erupted in noise. Their delegation stood up as one, roaring approval. The Velkari looked like humans, but bigger and stronger. Their skin was dark red, and their eyes were bright yellow. They wore black armor covered in sharp spikes. Their leader, War Marshal Vexthor, was enormous even for his species. His armor had silver decorations that showed his many victories. Vexthor walked to the speaker's podium with heavy steps. His boots made loud sounds on the metal floor. When he reached the center, he slammed his fist on the podium. The bang echoed through the entire hall. "People of the galaxy," Vexthor began. His voice was deep and harsh. "For too long we have lived in fear of old stories, ancient warnings that keep us weak. Today the Velkari Empire announces that we will expand into the Kepler sector." Gasps. And worried sounds came from all around the hall. Hyun-woo felt his stomach drop. The Kepler sector was human space. It contained 12 human colonies with over 2 million people. Many alien delegates started talking at once. The crystalline beings made bell-like warning sounds. The mammaloids chattered nervously. Even the usually calm ethereals began swirling. Faster. Vexthor raised his hand for silence. "We know what you are thinking. You want to tell us about the old rule, the ancient warning. But we are Velkari. We have conquered 17 sectors. We have defeated the Iron Fleet of Korvac. We have crushed the machine worlds of Zephyr. We do not fear stories about humans." In the gallery above, So Young Lee gripped her tablet tighter. She was a young military analyst, here to observe and learn. She had studied every major war in galactic history. She knew exactly what Vexthor was talking about. The oldest rule in the galaxy was simple: do not mess with humans. It was not written in any official treaty. No government had ever made it a law. but every species knew it. Parents told it to their children. Military academies taught it to their students. Diplomats whispered it in back rooms. The rule existed because of what had happened 300 years ago during humanity's first major war in space. The galaxy had watched in horror as humans fought each other above the moons of Saturn. They saw how humans could change from peaceful explorers into something else entirely, something that did not stop fighting until one side was completely destroyed. After that war ended, other species had quietly agreed to never give humans a reason to fight again. They gave Earth good trade deals. They shared technology. They invited humans into the council, all to keep the peace. Vexthor continued his speech. The humans tell stories about their old wars. They want us to believe they are dangerous. But look at them now. He pointed at the human section. A handful of diplomats in simple clothes. They have no great fleets, no vast armies. They spend their time exploring empty space and growing food on farm worlds. Some Velkari delegates laughed. The sound was ugly and mean. We have studied human military records, Vexthor said. Their last real war was against each other centuries ago. Since then, they have only fought small conflicts. Pirates, rebels, nothing that would test a true warrior race. Elder Taemin Park stood up slowly. His voice was quiet, but the translation system carried it to every corner of the hall. War Marshal Vexthor, Taemin said. May I share something from our history? Vexthor waved his hand dismissively. Speak, old human. Tell us your stories. Taemin walked to a smaller podium reserved for responses. He moved slowly, but there was something in his manner that made the entire hall go silent. 300 years ago, Taemin began, humans fought what we call the Saturn War. It lasted 6 months. When it ended, both sides had lost everything. Every ship, every station, every person who fought in it. The survivors looked at what they had done and made a promise. Never again. He paused and looked directly at Vexthor. Since then, we have kept that promise. We explore. We learn. We help others. We have not fought a real war in 3 centuries. Vexthor snorted. Exactly my point. You have grown soft. Taemin smiled. It was not a happy smile. War Marshal, you misunderstand. We did not stop fighting because we were weak. We stopped because we were too good at it. Murmurs spread through the hall. Many alien delegates nodded. They remembered the old stories their grandparents told. The Kepler colonies are human settlements, Taemin continued. They are families, farmers, engineers, people who left Earth to build new lives among the stars. If you attack them, you will not be fighting our military. You will be threatening our children. Vexthor laughed. And what will you do, old man? Send your diplomats to stop us? Taemin returned to his seat. As he sat down, Ambassador Hyunwoo stood up. The young diplomat walked to the podium with careful steps. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear. War Marshal Vexthor, Hyunwoo said. On behalf of Earth and all human colonies, I formally request that the Velkari Empire reconsider this action. The Kepler sector is sovereign human territory. And if we refuse? Vexthor asked. Hyunwoo was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his words fell into the silent hall like stones into deep water. Then you will learn why the galaxy has kept the peace for 300 years. Some rules exist for the protection of those who would break them. The warning hung in the air. Many alien delegates felt a chill they could not explain. They had heard their elders speak of human wars with fear and respect. They had learned about the terrible creativity humans showed when they decided to destroy something completely. But Vex Thor only laughed harder. Threats from diplomats in simple clothes. The Velkari Empire fears nothing, especially not humans, who have forgotten how to fight. As the session ended and delegates began to file out, So Young Lee remained in the gallery. She was making notes on her tablet, but her hands were shaking slightly. She had spent years studying military history. She knew exactly what Ambassador Hyun-woo's polite words really meant. The Velkari were about to learn why every other species in the galaxy remembered the old rule. They were about to discover what happened when humans had to choose between peace and protecting their own. Far away on the mining colony of New Busan in the Kepler sector, families were sitting down to dinner. They had no idea that a storm was coming. They did not know that their peaceful lives were about to become the spark that would remind the galaxy why some rules should never be broken. The warning came at dawn on New Busan. Jin-A Choi was drinking her morning coffee when the long-range sensors picked up the ships. As colony administrator, she was always the first to know when visitors arrived. Usually it was supply ships from Earth or traders from the inner colonies. The sensor readings on her screen made her put down her cup with shaking hands. 47 ships, all Velkari design, all moving in attack formation. Jin-A ran to the communication center in the main administration building. The streets of New Busan were just coming to life. Children walked to school. Workers headed to the mining facilities. Nobody knew that death was falling toward them from space. "Get me an open channel to the incoming fleet," Jin-A told her communications. Officer Yoonji Nam. The young woman's fingers flew over her controls. "Channel open, Administrator," Yoonji said. Her voice was steady, but Jin-A could see fear in her eyes. "Velkari Fleet, this is Administrator Jin-A Choi of New Busan Colony. You are entering human territorial space. Please state your intentions." The response came immediately. The voice was deep and harsh, filled with contempt. "Human Colony, this is Fleet Commander Zakhtar of the Velkari 3rd Battle Group. You will prepare for immediate evacuation. This world now belongs to the Velkari Empire." Jin-A took a deep breath. She had been trained for this moment, though she had never expected it to happen. "Fleet Commander, New Busan is a peaceful mining colony. We have families here. Children. We request time to arrange proper evacuation procedures." Laughter came through the speakers. "You have 2 hours, human. After that, we will demonstrate Velkari superiority." The channel closed. Jin-A stared at the silent communication panel. 2 hours to evacuate 12,000 people. It was impossible. She opened the colony-wide emergency channel. Her voice echoed from speakers throughout New Busan. "This is Administrator Choi. All residents must immediately report to emergency shelters. This is not a drill. Seek shelter immediately." Panic spread through the colony like wildfire. Parents grabbed their children. Workers dropped their tools and ran. The peaceful mining town became chaos in minutes. Down in the deep mining tunnels, Min-Ho Song was checking equipment when the alarm started. He was a maintenance engineer, responsible for keeping the heavy machinery running. He had moved to New Busan 5 years ago with his wife and 2 young daughters. They wanted a quiet life away from the busy cities of Earth. Min-Ho dropped his tools and ran for the surface. The emergency shelters were strong, but they were designed for accidents, not military attacks. He had to find his family. The streets were full of running people. Min-Ho pushed through the crowd, heading for his neighborhood. His wife Soo-Jin would be at home with their daughters. 8-year-old Yejin and 5-year-old Bora would be scared. He had to get to them. Above the planet, Ginny tried everything she could think of. She offered the Velkari mining rights. She promised resource-sharing agreements. She suggested joint development projects. The Velkari responded to every offer the same way. You have 1 hour remaining. In the colony's communication center, Yunji Nam was sending emergency messages to every human station within range. Earth was too far away to help. The nearest human military ship was 3 days' travel time. They were alone. Minho reached his house as the 1 hour warning came over the speakers. Su Jin was waiting by the door with their daughters. They hugged each other tightly. The emergency shelter is full, Su Jin said. They told us to go to the mining tunnels. Minho nodded. The deep tunnels were far underground. If anything could protect them, it would be the solid rock. They grabbed emergency supplies and ran toward the mining complex. Hundreds of other families had the same idea. The tunnels that normally echoed with machinery now filled with frightened voices. Parents held their children close. Everyone looked up at the tunnel ceiling, as if they could see through the rock to the ships waiting above. Administrator Jean A. made one last attempt at negotiation. Fleet Commander Zakhtar, we need more time. We have elderly people, sick people, children who cannot move quickly. Time is finished, human. The first orbital bombardment began at exactly 2 hours. The Velkari ships fired particle beams that could cut through solid rock. They targeted the colony's power plant first. The explosion lit up the morning sky like a second sun. Then they hit the communication towers, the spaceport, the residential areas. In the deep tunnels, the ground shook like an earthquake. Dust fell from the ceiling. Emergency lights flickered. Children cried. Adults tried to stay calm, but terror was written on every face. Minho held his family as the bombardment continued. Each impact sent vibrations through the rock. He could hear the colony being destroyed above them. Everything they had built, everything they had worked for, gone. The attack lasted 6 hours. The Velkari wanted to make sure nothing survived. They turned New Busan from a thriving colony into smoking ruins. When they were finished, they sent down ground troops to confirm the destruction. In the tunnels, the survivors waited in darkness. The power was gone. The air recycling systems had failed. They had maybe 2 days of breathing air left. Min Ho organized search teams. They went through collapsed sections looking for survivors. They found some, not many. Most of the colony had been on the surface when the bombardment began. On the 3rd day, they found Administrator Jin A in the ruins of the communication center. She was badly hurt, but alive. More importantly, she had managed to send one message before the towers were destroyed. Yunji Nam had died at her post, but her final transmission had gotten through to the relay station at Kepler Prime. 3 words. That would change everything. They killed children. The message reached Earth 12 days later. It was marked with the highest priority code and went directly to Earth Defense Command. Admiral Dong-Hyun Yu read the full report in his office aboard the EDS Incheon. The admiral was a calm man. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 30 years. He had fought pirates and rebels. He had seen combat, but nothing like what the report described. Orbital bombardment of civilians, families murdered from space, children killed to make a point. His aide, Captain Hae-Won Jung, watched her commander read the report. She saw his expression change. The professional calm disappeared. Something else took its place. Something cold and terrible. Captain Young, Admiral Yu said quietly, please contact Earth Command. Tell them to activate Protocol 7. Captain Young felt her blood turn cold. Protocol 7 had not been used in over 200 years. It was the authorization for total war mobilization. Sir, are you certain? Admiral Yu looked up from the report. His eyes were like winter. Captain, the Velkari have just learned what happens when you kill human children. Send the message. As Captain Jung sent the priority transmission to Earth, other reports were coming in from across human space. The attack on New Busan was just the beginning. Velkari fleets were moving against human colonies in 3 other systems. They were not taking prisoners. They were not accepting surrender. They were simply destroying everything human. But something else was happening too. On every human world, from the farm colonies to the industrial planets to Earth itself, the same change was occurring. The peaceful explorers and farmers and engineers were remembering something their ancestors had tried to forget. They were remembering how to be angry. In the ruins of New Busan, Minho Song dug through the collapsed remains of his house. He found them in what had been the kitchen. Sujin, Yejin, and Bora. His family. His entire world. They had not made it to the tunnels in time. Minho knelt beside them in the rubble and made a promise. The Velkari thought they had won an easy victory. They thought they had crushed a defenseless colony. They had no idea what they had actually done. They had given humanity a reason to remember why the galaxy feared them. Far away on Earth, in secret military facilities that had been mothballed. For centuries, ancient machines began to wake up. Factories that had not operated since the Saturn War started producing ships designed for one purpose: to destroy enemies so completely that no trace remained. The Velkari Empire had broken the oldest rule in the galaxy. Now they would learn why that rule existed. The human war machine was awakening, and it was very, very angry. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in its 1,000-year history. Ambassador Hyun-Woo Kim sat in his chair without moving. He had not spoken for 2 hours. He had not responded to questions. He had not even looked up when other delegates tried to get his attention. He just sat there, reading reports from the destroyed colonies on his tablet. Around him, the Great Hall buzzed with worried conversations. Alien delegates spoke in frightened whispers about the strange signals coming from human space. Long-range sensors were detecting massive energy signatures near Earth. Ships were moving that did not match any known human designs. The crystalline delegate, a being that looked like living diamond, approached the human section. Her voice sounded like wind chimes when she spoke. Ambassador Kim, we are concerned about the military buildups our sensors are detecting. Can you explain what Earth is doing? Hyun-Woo looked up slowly. His eyes were different now. The diplomatic warmth was gone, replaced by something that made the crystalline delegate step back. We are preparing, he said simply. Preparing for what? To remind the galaxy why the old rule existed. On Earth, General Subin Kang walked through a facility that officially did not exist. The Terran War Production Center was buried 3 kilometers under the mountains of Colorado. It had been built during humanity's first expansion into space, designed to produce weapons if humans ever faced an extinction-level threat. For 300 years, it had been sealed and forgotten. Now it hummed with activity. Assembly lines that had been silent for centuries roared to life. Automated factories began producing ships from designs locked away since the Saturn War. These were not exploration vessels or peaceful trading ships. These were warships, built with one purpose: to destroy enemies completely. General, the first batch will be ready in 72 hours. reported Colonel In Soo Han, the facility's director. "We can produce 50 ships per day once we reach full capacity." General Kang nodded. She was a small woman with gray hair, but her presence filled the enormous facility. "What about the special projects?" "The Psychological Warfare Division is operational. Dr. Woo Jin Lee has activated all protocols." Dr. Woo Jin Lee worked in a different kind of laboratory. She studied minds, not machines. Her job was to understand how humans thought during war, and more importantly, how to make enemies afraid of fighting humans. She stood before a wall of screens showing Valkyrie communications. Her team had been intercepting their military transmissions for days. What they found was interesting. "The Valkyrie are confused," she told her assistant, Dr. Ji-Hoon Park. "They expected humans to negotiate, to offer surrender terms. Instead, human colonies are going silent and fortifying." What does that tell us about their psychology? They understand victory through strength, but not through determination. They have never fought an enemy that becomes more dangerous when hurt. Dr. Lee made notes on her tablet. "Activate Protocol 7. Begin psychological operations." Protocol 7 was humanity's most classified military procedure. It had been developed after the Saturn War, when human leaders realized they needed a way to remove normal ethical constraints during existential threats. It did not make humans into monsters. It made them into something worse. Humans who fought, without limits. The protocol had 3 phases. First, remove civilian authority from military decisions. Second, authorize any tactic that increased chances of victory. Third, eliminate rules of engagement that protected enemy non-combatants. The Valkyrie had killed human children. Protocol 7 was not just authorized, it was mandatory. On Mars, Admiral Dong Hyun-Yu inspected the first ships rolling off the production lines. The EDS Vengeful was a destroyer-class vessel, but it looked wrong somehow. The hull was too angular. The weapon ports were too large. It looked like it was designed by people who understood exactly how to kill things in space. "Admiral," Captain Hae-Won Jung approached with a tablet. "We are receiving volunteers faster than we can process them. Every human military veteran in the galaxy is requesting immediate activation." Admiral Yu was not surprised. Word of New Busan had spread through human space like wildfire. The response had been immediate and terrifying in its unity. Humans everywhere were volunteering for military service, not to defend their homes, but to attack the Valkyrie. What about civilian volunteers? Over 2 million applications in the last day. Farmers, engineers, teachers, doctors, everyone wants to serve. The Admiral looked out at the shipyard where dozens of new warships were taking shape. "The Valkyrie think they fought a weak colony. They have no idea what they actually did." "Sir, they gave us permission to stop being peaceful." In the ruins of New Busan, a small team of human special forces found Min-ho Song digging through the rubble of his house. Commander Eugene Park led the rescue team, but Min-ho refused evacuation. "I want to fight," he said simply. Commander Park looked at the man kneeling beside the bodies of his family. She had seen this expression before, during the few small conflicts humans had fought over the centuries. It was the look of someone who had nothing left to lose. "Are you sure? We can arrange transport to Earth, grief counseling, time to heal." Min-ho stood up slowly. His clothes were torn and dirty. His hands were cut from digging through debris, but his voice was steady. "Commander, they killed my wife and daughters to make a point. I want to help you make a point back." Commander Park nodded. "Welcome to the Vengeance Corps." The Vengeance Corps was a new unit. created specifically for humans who had lost everything to Velkhari attacks. They were not soldiers in the traditional sense. They were something more dangerous. People with nothing left but anger and the skills to use it effectively. Meanwhile, the Velkhari Empire was beginning to receive disturbing intelligence reports. Their spy networks throughout human space reported the same impossible information. Human colonies were not evacuating, they were preparing for war. War Marshal Vex Thor read the reports in his command center aboard the flagship Dominator. Nothing made sense. According to Velkhari intelligence, humans had minimal military capability. Their largest ships were explorers and cargo haulers. Their armies were small peacekeeping forces, but the reports described massive ship movements, industrial facilities converting to weapons production, military communications using codes the Velkhari could not break. "This must be wrong," Vex Thor told his intelligence chief. "Humans do not have this capability." "Sir, multiple sources confirm the same information. Human space is mobilizing for total war." Vex Thor stood and walked to the viewing port. Outside, his fleet prepared for the next phase of conquest. 47 ships had destroyed one small colony. Soon, hundreds of Velkhari vessels would sweep through human space, claiming world after world. "Let them mobilize," he said finally. "We will crush their fleets the same way we crush their colonies." But on the edge of Velkhari space, something was happening that their sensors could not detect. Human ships were arriving, not the exploration vessels or cargo haulers the Velkhari expected. These were warships that looked like they had been designed by nightmares. The first human fleet consisted of only 30 ships, led by Admiral Dong-Hyun Yu aboard the EDS Incheon. They positioned themselves at the Vega Junction, a strategic point that controlled access to 3 Velkhari systems. "Admiral," Captain Jung reported, "Velkhari fleet approaching. 200 ships." Admiral Yu studied the tactical display. 200 Velkhari vessels against 30 human ships. In any normal military calculation, it would be a massacre. The humans would be destroyed in minutes. But Admiral Yu smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Captain Jung, signal the fleet. Begin operation reminder." "Sir, what should I tell them about our objectives?" Admiral Yu looked at the approaching Velkhari fleet. Each ship represented the military might of an empire that had conquered 17 sectors. Each crew thought they were facing weak humans who would break and run when confronted with superior force. They were about to learn the difference between military strength and human determination. "Tell them we are here to teach the Velkhari why the old rule existed," Admiral Yu said quietly. "Tell them we are here to remind the galaxy what happens when you make humans choose between peace and vengeance." The Velkhari fleet closed to battle range, confident in their overwhelming numerical advantage. They had studied human conflicts and found them limited, restrained by rules and ethics that the Velkhari considered weakness. They were about to discover that humans at war were not the same as humans at peace. They were about to learn that the peaceful explorers and farmers they had dismissed could become something entirely different when their children were threatened. The battle for Vega Junction was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to remember why some rules should never be broken. The Battle of Vega Junction lasted 6 hours and 17 minutes. When it ended, 200 Velkhari ships had been reduced to debris and radiation. 30 human vessels remained, with only minor damage to 3 of them. Fleet Commander Karthok had led the Velkhari force with complete confidence. His ships outnumbered the humans by more than 6 to 1. His crews were experienced warriors who had conquered entire star systems. He expected the battle to be over in minutes. The first surprise came when the humans did not retreat. Standard military doctrine said that when vastly outnumbered, a smart commander would fall back to defensible positions. The humans did the opposite. They spread out into attack formation and accelerated toward the Velkari fleet. "They are charging us," reported Karthok's tactical officer. "All 30 ships, moving at maximum velocity." Karthok laughed. "Brave fools. Open fire when they reach weapons range." The second surprise came when the human ships began using tactics that made no sense. Instead of focusing fire on single targets, like any reasonable military force, they seemed to attack randomly. Ships would appear to ignore dangerous enemies to strike at minor targets. Their movements looked chaotic. It took Karthok 20 minutes to realize the truth. The human attacks were not random. They were surgical. Every minor target they hit was a command ship, a communications relay, or a tactical coordinator. The humans were not trying to destroy his fleet. They were trying to blind it. Captain Haiwan-jung commanded the destroyer EDS Seoul in the center of the human formation. Her ship was outnumbered 50-1, but she was not afraid. She was thinking. "Target the Velkari flagship's communication array," she ordered her weapons officer. "Captain, that ship has 12 escort vessels. We cannot get close enough." "We are not going to get close. We are going through them." Captain Jung ordered her ship to full speed, directly toward the heart of the Velkari fleet. Her crew thought she had lost her mind. A single destroyer could not survive a charge through 50 enemy ships. They were wrong. The Soul's first salvo disabled 3 Velkari vessels. Not destroyed them, disabled them. The humans had studied Velkari ship designs and knew exactly where to hit. Power systems, navigation controls, weapons targeting. The Velkari ships became helpless, drifting obstacles that blocked their own fleet's movement. Captain Jung threaded her ship through the chaos, using disabled Velkari vessels as shields. Her weapons targeted communication arrays and sensor systems. Every hit made the enemy fleet a little more blind, a little more confused. When she finally reached the flagship, she did something that no Velkari commander could understand. Instead of trying to destroy it, she rammed it. The Soul's reinforced hull tore through the flagship's command section like a bullet through paper. Captain Jung and her crew died in the collision, but they took the entire Velkari command structure with them. Without central coordination, the Velkari fleet began to fall apart. Admiral Dong-hyun Yu watched the tactical display from the bridge of the EDS Incheon. Captain Jung's sacrifice had worked perfectly. The enemy fleet was now 200 individual ships with no way to coordinate their actions. "Begin Phase 2, he ordered. The remaining human ships split into small groups and began hunting, not fighting, hunting. They used the debris field created by Captain Jung's attack to hide their approach. They struck fast and disappeared before the Velkari could respond. It was not honorable combat. It was not glorious battle. It was systematic destruction carried out by people who understood exactly how to kill efficiently. Commander Eugene Park led a strike team aboard the Velkari heavy cruiser Domination. Her team consisted entirely of Vengeance Corps volunteers, including Minho Song. They moved through the ship like ghosts, disabling systems and eliminating crew members with surgical precision. The Velkari expected boarding actions to be chaotic, malaise. Instead, they faced humans who moved with cold calculation. Minho Song had been a mining engineer, but he understood machinery. He knew exactly how to sabotage the ship's life support, artificial gravity, and weapons systems. "Target secured," Commander Park reported to Admiral Yu. "Ship is dead in space." Across the battlefield, similar raids were taking place. Human boarding teams struck at Velkari ships with tactics borrowed from humanity's darkest history. They used psychological warfare, turning ship lights on and off to create panic. They played recordings of human voices over the ship's communication systems, speaking in calm tones about death and vengeance. The Velkari were warriors, but they had never faced enemies like this. Humans did not fight for honor or glory. They fought to win, completely and permanently. After 6 hours, Fleet Commander Karthok found himself alone on the bridge of his crippled flagship. His fleet was gone. His crew was dead. Emergency power flickered, casting strange shadows on the damaged walls. A human voice came through his ship's speakers. It was Admiral Dong-Hyun Yu, speaking from the EDS Incheon. "Fleet Commander Karthok, you are the sole survivor of your fleet. I am offering you the chance to surrender." Karthok's hand moved toward his weapon. Death in battle was better than the shame of surrender. "Before you choose," Admiral Yu continued, "I want you to understand something. This fleet you just fought was not our main force. This was not our best ships or our most experienced crews. This was our light reconnaissance unit." Karthok's hand stopped moving. "I am sending you back to Velkari space with a message for War Marshal Vexthor. Tell him that humans remember New Busan. Tell him that Protocol 7 is now active. Tell him that we are no longer bound by the rules that kept the galaxy peaceful." A human shuttle docked with Karthok's ship. Instead of soldiers, 2 medics came aboard. They treated his wounds and provided him with enough supplies to reach Velkari space. "Why?" Karthok asked as they prepared to leave. One of the medics, a young woman named Dr. Soo-Jin Kim, looked at him with tired eyes. "Because dead messengers cannot deliver warnings." The news of Vega Junction reached War Marshal Vexthor 12 hours later. Karthok's report was impossible to believe. 200 Velkari ships destroyed by 30 human vessels. Tactical coordination that defied military logic. Boarding teams that moved like nightmares. "This cannot be accurate," Vexthor told his staff. "Check the survivor's medical condition. He may be suffering from battle trauma." But other reports were coming in from across the front. Velkari fleets were disappearing, not retreating or suffering defeats. Disappearing completely. Long-range sensors detected massive explosions, then nothing. The humans were not fighting defensive actions. They were hunting Velkari forces with methodical precision. Intelligence reports described human tactics that seemed insane. Ships that rammed enemy vessels instead of trying to escape. Boarding teams that disabled life support instead of fighting honorable duels. Commanders who sacrificed entire crews to achieve tactical objectives. Dr. Woo-Jin Lee's psychological warfare units began broadcasting throughout Velkari space. Not threats or demands, but historical documentation, records of human conflicts throughout their species' history. The message was simple. This is what we do to each other. Imagine what we will do to you. The broadcasts included footage from the Saturn War, showing human ships fighting until they literally tore each other apart. They showed records of human ground conflicts where armies fought for years over barren landscapes just to prove they could not be defeated. The effect on Velkari morale was devastating. They began to understand that they were not fighting a normal military force. They were fighting a species that viewed war as a problem to be solved permanently. On Valkyrie Prime, the Empire's capital world, emergency sessions of the War Council met around the clock. Military advisors studied the human tactics, trying to find weaknesses. They found none that made sense. They sacrifice valuable assets for minimal tactical gains, reported General Vaktar, the Empire's chief strategist. Their ship designs prioritize offensive capability over survival. Their crews accept certain death to achieve objectives. Then they are insane. War Marshal Vex Thor concluded. No, sir. They are logical. They understand that total victory requires total commitment. They are willing to pay any price to win. Vex Thor stood and walked to the massive viewing wall that showed the capital city spreading out below. Millions of Valkyrie lived and worked in the sprawling metropolis, confident that their military would protect them from any threat. For the first time since the war began, Vex Thor felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. What are our options? We can mobilize the reserve fleets, call back forces from conquered territories, fortify our core worlds. Do it. And send a message to the Galactic Council. Request mediation talks. General Vaktar stared at his commander. Sir, are you suggesting negotiation? Vex Thor looked out at his capital city and imagined human ships in orbit above it. Ships crewed by people who viewed death as an acceptable cost of victory. Ships commanded by officers who would sacrifice anything to protect their own children. I am suggesting that we find out what it takes to make the humans stop fighting before they reach our core worlds. But it was already too late. Deep in space, human fleets were moving toward Valkyrie territory. Admiral Dong-Hyun Yu commanded forces that grew larger every day as new ships completed construction. Each vessel was crewed by volunteers who had one simple goal. The siege of Valkyrie Prime began on a Tuesday. Admiral Dong-Hyun Yu stood on the bridge of the EDS Incheon, watching as 500 human ships took positions around the Valkyrie home world. The fleet stretched across space like a steel constellation, each vessel carrying crews who had volunteered to end this war permanently. The journey to Valkyrie Prime had taken 3 months. Along the way, human forces had systematically dismantled the Valkyrie Empire, not just defeated it, dismantled it. Every military installation destroyed, every fleet scattered, every conquered world liberated. The Valkyrie had tried everything. They had mobilized their reserve forces, only to watch them disappear in methodical human attacks. They had called back troops from occupied territories, only to find their supply lines cut. They had attempted negotiation, only to receive a single response from Earth. After Valkyrie Prime falls, now their capital world hung in space before. The human fleet like a ripe fruit waiting to be picked. Admiral, reported Captain Won-Sik Lee, who had replaced Captain Jung as Admiral Yu's aide. All ships report ready. Ground assault teams are prepared for deployment. Admiral Yu nodded. The ground teams included Min-Ho Song and the rest of the Vengeance Corps. 3 months of fighting had turned the grief-stricken engineer into something harder than steel. He had requested personal assignment to the mission that would capture War Marshal Vex Thor. Signal the planet, Admiral Yu ordered. Final terms. The communication went directly to the Valkyrie War Council chambers. War Marshal Vex Thor received the message while surrounded by his remaining generals and advisors. Most of them looked like they had not slept in weeks. Admiral Yu's image appeared on the main screen. He looked exactly the same as he had 3 months ago. Calm, professional, and absolutely determined. War Marshal Vex Thor, Admiral Yu began. "You now face the same choice you offered the people of New Busan. Surrender immediately or face the consequences of your decisions." Vexthor stood before the screen. Around him, his advisors whispered frantically about defensive options, but he was not listening. He had spent 3 months watching his empire crumble under human attacks. He had seen tactics that defied military logic succeed again and again. He had learned what it meant to fight an enemy that viewed war as a problem to be solved completely. "What are your terms?" he asked. "Complete and unconditional surrender, withdrawal from all conquered territories, reparations to the families of those killed at New Busan and other colonies, dismantling of your offensive military capability, acceptance of permanent human oversight of your remaining forces." The terms were devastating. They would reduce the mighty Velkari Empire to a client state under human protection. "And if we refuse?" Admiral Yu's expression did not change. "Then we will demonstrate why the ancient rule existed. Your capital will share the fate you gave to New Busan. You would murder millions of civilians. War Marshal, you began this conflict by murdering children from orbit. Do not speak to us about civilians." The communication ended. In the War Council chambers, silence fell like a physical weight. General Vaktar finally spoke. "We have 40 million people on this planet. The orbital defense platforms are still functional. We can make them pay a terrible price." War Marshal Vexthor looked around the room at his officers. These were the commanders who had conquered 17 sectors. They had never known defeat until they faced humans. Now they were trapped on their home world, surrounded by enemies, who fought with cold calculation instead of honorable fury. "How many ships did we lose at Vega Junction?" he asked quietly. 200, sir." "How many human ships were destroyed?" "1, sir. The destroyer that rammed our flagship." "And since then? How many human ships have we destroyed in 3 months of fighting?" Vaktar was quiet for a long moment. 17, sir. 17 ships in 3 months, while they destroyed our entire military. Vexthor sat heavily in his command chair. "We are not fighting warriors, we are fighting something else. Something that views the death of enemies as an engineering problem to be solved efficiently." Above the planet, the human fleet began its final approach. But this was not the chaotic orbital bombardment the Velkari had used against human colonies. This was surgical, precise, and absolutely merciless. Human ships targeted only military installations, command bunkers, weapons platforms, communication arrays. Each strike was calculated to cripple the planet's defenses without harming civilian areas. The Velkari orbital defense platforms tried to fight back, but they faced human tactics that made no tactical sense. Ships that should have retreated instead charged directly into the defense grid. Crews that should have tried to preserve their vessels instead used them as guided missiles. Captain Hee-Jin Park commanded the destroyer EDS Daegu when it encountered the massive orbital fortress Guardian of Velkari. The fortress had enough firepower to destroy a dozen ships, but Captain Park did not try to fight it conventionally. Instead, she loaded her ship's cargo bay with explosives and set course directly for the fortress's main reactor. Her crew had 30 seconds to abandon ship before impact. The explosion could be seen from the planet's surface. The Guardian of Velkari, pride of the Velkari defense fleet, became an expanding ball of plasma that lit up the night sky. Similar sacrifices occurred throughout the battle. Human crews gave their lives not for glory or honor, but to complete the mission. Each sacrifice brought the siege closer to its inevitable end. On the planet's surface, Min-Ho Song led a Vengeance Corps strike team through the capital city's underground tunnels. Their target was the War Council complex where Vex-Thor and his remaining commanders were hiding. The Valkyrie had never faced urban warfare conducted by humans. Min-Ho's team moved through the city like a virus, using maintenance tunnels and service corridors to avoid detection. They disabled power grids, communication networks, and transportation systems with the methodical precision of engineers who understood exactly how cities worked. "Target building in sight," Min-Ho reported to Commander Eugene Park. "Guards are in position, but they are watching the wrong directions. The Valkyrie expected frontal assaults or siege tactics. They did not expect humans to attack through the sewers, the power systems, and the building's own air conditioning ducts." Min-Ho emerged from a ventilation grate directly behind War Marshal Vex-Thor's command chair. The Valkyrie leader was studying tactical displays, trying to coordinate a defense against enemies who seemed to be everywhere at once. "War Marshal," Min-Ho said quietly. Vex-Thor spun around to find a human pointing a weapon at him. This was not a soldier in military uniform. This was a man in simple work clothes who looked like he had spent months learning how to kill efficiently. "You killed my family," Min-Ho said. "My wife Su-Jin, my daughters Ye-Jin and Bo-Ra. Do you remember their names?" Vex-Thor looked into the human's eyes and saw something that made his blood freeze. Not rage, not hatred, just cold, absolute determination. I do not know the names of individual casualties." "I do. I remember every person who died at New Busan. Every child you murdered to prove Valkyrie superiority." Min-Ho's voice was calm, conversational. "The war is over, War Marshal. Your fleets are destroyed. Your empire is finished. You have one choice left." "What choice?" "Surrender now and face trial for your crimes, or die here and let your people face the consequences of your pride." Around the command center, other Vengeance Corps members had silently eliminated the guards. The remaining Valkyrie officers stood with their hands raised, facing humans who had lost everything to Valkyrie aggression. War Marshal Vex-Thor looked at the tactical displays one final time. His orbital defenses were gone. His fleets were destroyed. His capital city was controlled by human forces who had appeared like ghosts in the night. He had broken the oldest rule in the galaxy, and now he was paying the price. "I surrender," he said quietly. The formal surrender ceremony took place aboard the EDS Incheon 3 days later. Representatives from the Galactic Council attended, along with survivors from every human colony the Valkyrie had attacked. "War Marshal," Vex-Thor signed the surrender documents with shaking hands. The terms were exactly as Admiral Yu had stated: complete dismantling of Valkyrie military power, reparations to human families, and permanent oversight to ensure this never happened again. Ambassador Hyun-Woo Kim spoke to the assembled delegates. His voice carried across space to every world in the galaxy. "For 300 years, the galaxy has lived in peace because we remembered an ancient rule. Today, that rule has been rewritten. It is no longer simply, 'Do not mess with humans.' It is now, 'Do not mess with anyone's children,' because humans are watching." Elder Taemin Park stood beside him, looking older but satisfied. "The Valkyrie learned what our ancestors knew. Humans at peace are the galaxy's greatest diplomats and explorers. Humans at war are its most terrifying force of nature." In the weeks that followed, the human fleets returned to Earth. The war production facilities were shut down and sealed once again. The military personnel returned to civilian life, becoming farmers and engineers and teachers once more. But across the galaxy, the lesson had been learned. Parents told their children new stories about the humans who had dismantled an empire in 3 months. Military academies studied human tactics with fearful respect. Diplomats added new clauses to treaties.